Welcome to my cake kitchen. I'm Gladys. Over here I make simple, informative tutorials to help you navigate baking and decorating. Right now, if you've been here before, we are going to be crumb coating and covering this cake right here. I was here earlier to fill and stack this cake. It's part 1 of Cake Decorating 101, where I take you through the phases of stacking, covering a cake. And this is part 2, where we crumb coat or cover this cake in ganache. Hopefully I can cover a lot of aspects that will help you take this as a learning resource so you can also undertake your own cake decorating at home. I'm tight for time, so I'm not going to waste your time. I'm gonna go straight into it. When there are long form videos and other videos in live chats where I have covered this subject extensively, so perhaps check on some of that for additional resource and information. In the meantime, today I'm just covering this cake with some ganache. There are different mediums by which you can cover or crumb coat a cake. You can use buttercream, and if you're new to cake decorating, you may have heard buttercream, buttercream, buttercream. Now, buttercream is primarily used to fill into a cake, which is what is done here. It performs so many functions. I have discussed that a ton on this channel, but it can also be used to cover a cake, except I'm not using buttercream to cover the cake. I am deriving the covering using ganache here. Ganache is more steady in terms of stability for the cake and also for taste also, because this is made of white chocolate. This is simple white chocolate, and I am just using the double card method. Now, if you're new to cake decorating, you're wondering, what does that even mean? The double card method simply uses a top card and a bottom drum or card to align, which then helps you get your cake cleanly covered. You also require a few tools like your spirit level and a few other things that should help you get the best out of the cake. Covering a cake is not just about covering it, but also making sure that the cake is covered for stability, straightness, and clean presentation. Tapita, welcome back. Great to have you, and thank you always for your support. This is going to be a fondant cake, so as much as I am covering this cake, I am also literally just, normally you will crumb coat a cake to seal in all the crumbs so that it is much easier to cover. But for a fondant cake, or depending on how the cake is presented, you can go ahead and cover it without crumb coating the cake at all. Now, the risk is that the crumbs from the cake will seep through, as you can see, if you can look closely, but I'm not too concerned about that. To work with ganache, you want to make sure that your ganache is spreadable and the consistency is easy. This is a 3:1 ratio of ganache. I'll leave details of this in the description box, but I don't think I've discussed ganache. I have a ganache tutorial on in long form, but I haven't actually dug into ganache as I should. What in God's name is that? Brighton. It's a cake, okay? Is it that bad? You were like, what in God's name? It must be scary for you, is it? It's simply a cake, Brighton, okay? So that's done. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna scrape the side of the cake. Right, as you can see, there you have it. It just makes it easier when you have the top board, because then it helps to align the cake so that you can check the cake for straightness. I also, normally, if you've been on this channel, you will see I whip my ganache. I just chose not to whip this ganache because I chose not to. Thank you over there if you're in the chat. Thank you for the compliment and thank you for being here. I chose not to whip this ganache because this ganache has lemon in it. It's a lemon flavored ganache, and for that, if I whip it, because there was fresh lemon juice mixed into the ganache, it might break, making using it a tad bit difficult than I need it to be. So I skipped the use of having to whip it. So there you go. I mean, I have said before, if you were here on the earlier live, a cleanly presented cake doesn't happen. It takes intention, it takes skill, it takes time, and there you go. Right? I'm not done yet. So essentially what I've done is I've just covered this without having to crumb coat it. And again, the crumb coating is just a layer that covers the crumb, seals it in, and makes it easy for a clean, polished look. Depending on what you are doing and what your goals and objectives are, crumb coating becomes necessary for your process. But it's not always, especially for this one. Eggy mayo, you're asking what's the filling. The filling is lemon flavored Swiss meringue buttercream and curd, lemon curd, right? It's a lemon cake. Okay. If you've just joined in the chat, thank you for being here. I am seeing a few new people for the first time. Perhaps you are some of my silent people who have been sitting on the fence quietly. Great to have you. Thank you for being here. Oh, eggy mayo. You know what? Stick around on the channel and I will eat some cake on your behalf. How does that sound? Okay. I know. It's a great flavorful cake though, because the curd is homemade. It's not the rubbish stuff we buy. Okay. Nothing beats homemade curd. So I made it freshly made curd yesterday. Right. Look at how polished that cake looks. Now, when you cover a cake in fondant, it is only a representation of the foundation work that has been completed. So I want this cake to be clean. Like, that's my aim. But I can be a little bit scatty. So, who knows? Who knows? Let's see. Let's get to the top here. Actually, no, I'll leave the top. Thank you. For those of you in the chat, thank you so much. You actually motivate me to keep going. Sometimes it's not easy, you know. Cake decorating can be really challenging, especially if there is an artistry to it. Because this cake has to be polished and clean with no potholes, with nothing on the side, just so that the fondant will take to it easily. So I sincerely appreciate every comment that is very positive and encouraging. I'm going to go back in to fill this side. And yeah, sometimes one has to know when to stop, okay? One just has to know when to stop. And sometimes the temptation can be you can keep going on and on, scraping and scraping, and then you ruin it. So I am just going to cover this side slightly, and then we will scrape, and then we'll be done with it. Ganache is actually awesome for covering a cake. Tabitha, you're seeing me decorate a tiered cake. Okay. The decorating of a cake when I'm doing it live can be a little bit boring because it's the same repetitive thing over and over again. But you know what? I am happy to do it over again just so that you can learn from it. So look, we have the cake covered. So I've just gone back in because I need to fill in any air spaces, just because those will end up leaving dents, right? They may leave dents when you go to cover with fondant. So it's really important at this stage that everything Tabitha, never you mind. Making cakes and decorating them has been a thing for a while, so don't worry. I'm sure this won't be my last one, but I hope this is of some use to you. There you go. The scraping also takes a bit of skill. You need to understand what you're doing, and the idea is to hold your scraper. This is a PME 9-inch scraper, and you need to hold it perhaps at a 45-degree angle. And there's water, warm water that I've just poured from my kettle, boiling water, to my side here. And the intention is when you're working with ganache, it settles hard quickly. So to be able to get a smooth, clean, polished look, as you can see here, you have to make sure that your tool is warm. So at 45-degree angle, you just move across and around the cake and lift. Of course, because I've done this over and over again, it almost seems like I can do this in one sweep. But if you're a beginner, perhaps section your cake mentally into 4 sections. So you do 1/4, you lift, you come back, you take it from where you last ended, and then move another 1/4, or do it in as many scrapes as possible. But you want to make sure that the distance between each scrape is wide enough to give you a clean look. All right. Yeah, you can do, because part of the, okay, Tabitha is asking a question. Can you press on the cake? 1 second, I'll take the question again, and then we can answer it, just to give you, I think I'm done here, because if I do any more, I would end up taking away from the cake, and I don't want to do that. But as you can see, we're done. So this goes into the fridge to set completely, and then I will come and I'll take this off, and then we have a cleanly sharp edged cake. So let me just go put that in the fridge, and then I will answer your question. Thank you, cold beans. Okay, let me see what questions we oh, cold beans, I'm making you hungry. Oh, sorry, darling. Okay, it's always good to eat cake, isn't it? If you were my neighbor, are you going to put the, yeah, I'm going to put the little chocolate. This isn't cake. This, oh, cold beans, you are so sweet. And Tabitha, you are forever sweet. Well, you know what? If you've made cakes for nearly 10 years, you don't always feel tempted to eat a cake, to be honest. It becomes your normality. But I see what you mean, cold beans. Tabitha is asking, do you press it to the cake firmly or lightly or in between? Tabitha, are you asking about how I stack the cakes? Never you worry. I don't know if I'm going to stack it on a live, but here I'll talk you through what I do. So this is done. It's going to be covered in fondant. But even if it was just a plainly ganache cake, as you can see here, you dowel the cake, and the dowel looks something like this. Not this thin. I don't use these thin dowels, because the idea of a dowel is to take on the weight of the cake coming down over this. So the dowel is a little thicker than this, but sort of something like this, and it goes in the cake. I have about 6 of those around the cake, and then I put the small one on it. If you check the channel, you would see a couple of videos, not the live ones, I don't think. If you check the long form format, I mean, these days I make the recipe videos, but I started with in-depth tutorial videos where you've seen me stack a 3D cake, a gravity defying cake, and all sorts. So if you check some of those videos, I'm sure you will see how I stack a cake. The tool to make it look smooth. Oh, okay. Sorry. So I went on a tangent. Okay. So do you press hard on it? Actually, there is no pressing at all. In fact, the intention is, I mean, come to talk about the tools I use. I was using the metal tool, and I prefer metal tools to the plastic ones, because the plastic ones, you can't warm them up. If you put them in water, they bend. So I don't use plastic. My recommended is stainless steel, PME. So you know what? Let's take it again. There's actually no pressing onto. It's at a 45-degree angle, and then you move the cake round and it sweeps. if there is supposed to be any sort of touching, it's very gentle and smooth. Does that, look at me, I've picked on the cake, look. So let me just fill that in, and then we'll take it again. Right, so let's do the pressing again. It's smooth and gentle there. Can you see? It literally picks the excess up, and that's it. There you go. So we are done. We have a cleanly covered cake. I'm going to put that away, and then I'm going to get the other one on it. It's an offset spatula, Tabitha. Yes. You know what I was saying earlier? You can find, Tabitha says she needs to get herself a scraping tool and an offset spatula. Go ahead, Tabitha. Why not? Check on the, if you check on the previous videos, there's a link to my Amazon shop front. I have organized basic decorating tools based on things that I'll recommend, because I keep being asked those, and I've put them together in the shop. So you will see, and you don't have to really search it if you like. And I think my Amazon shop is set in the Amazon.com. So it's US based anyway. All right. So I'm going to put that in the fridge quickly, and then I'll be back with the tree. Sometimes I like a bit of realistic representation, just so we know what we are working with. So the other cake that you would have seen looked so perfect and was covered easily. Well, clearly we have an imperfect one. Remember when I said, when we were filling the cake, if you don't do the border correctly, the cake will leak and cause problems. The filling will leak. Here we are. So this is any cake maker's nightmare, especially in the hot, sunny weather. If you have this, you have to fix it ASAP. So I'm going to show you how to fix a problem like this when it develops, or when you see that on your cake. Now, how does this happen? This happens because the border, the soft filling doesn't hold itself, in which case we have jam here. Because it doesn't hold itself, it flows in between the cake. So you need to secure it by creating a border which will contain the filling. Now, what you see here is the brown here outside of the cake is chocolate buttercream. The consistency of the buttercream at the time of filling was very soft, which means when I towered the rest of the cake layers on it, it was pushing the buttercream out because it was soft. And then I didn't take time to create a strong barrier within which the soft filling is going to be kept. Now, that is what you call classic human error or decorator's error. This problem is caused by my own doing. Because in cake decorating, you'll find that there are things that will work against you that is not your fault, and you have to mitigate that by choices you make. And then there are things that are completely within your capacity, and if you negate that in the process, you will have consequences. So this is definitely a decorator's error, because I didn't follow the process diligently, and then I didn't do things properly. However, this is something, if you were a beginner and you didn't have the understanding of how these mistakes evolve with your decorating process, these are things that you can have an understanding of and then help yourself so you don't have further problems down the line. So first of all, how do you fix this? If you have a problem like this, you make sure that you clean the jam off. Because if you don't clean the jam off, it is going to interfere with the ganache that you're going to be using. Now, the next thing, whatever you do, first of all, focus on filling the source of the leak. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to roll that around. Yep. It probably helps a lot more here that I've been able to trim the cake down. So over here, it is really important that I crumb coat the cake, because not only is crumb coating going to keep all the crumbs in, because chocolate is brown. You don't want to cut into a cake and then have all the brown bits like surrounding the cake. Doesn't make for a good looks, and preferably I like a clean slice to the cake, which is why I have trimmed it. But more importantly, I am going to cover this aspect where the source of leak is, just to stop the leak from occurring through the process. Now be aware that as this is happening, the buttercream, especially because I've brought it out of the fridge, will be coming to room temperature. So working quickly becomes really important at this stage. If you're in the chat and you have questions for me, bear with me. Oh, Tapita, what's your weather going to be like? First of all, any cake, tiered or single, is important. Weather is important, okay? Not because I'm in England, because English people like to talk about the weather like it's a national sport. But I'm not talking about the weather because it's a national sport. It's because I'm a cake maker and the weather is important to me. Okay, so as you can see, my attitude to filling the covering this cake is slightly different from the cake I covered earlier. And the reason is this cake looks very precious and tricky, especially with the unstable buttercream. And if I didn't take my time to do things right, I will end up having a cake that is slipping and sliding. We don't want a dancing cake out here, people. We don't want that drama. Okay? Okay. Cold and possibly rainy is a good thing, Tabitha. Okay? Cold and rainy is a good thing. Because, if you were to make a cake on a summer's day, girl, you will need the Lord's Prayer. Okay? Right. I think because I'm crumb coating this cake, and remember, crumb coating is to kind of seal all the crumbs in, keep the cake with the buttercream steady, and then before I do anything. So I need some water, hot water here, because I also need to apply the ganache gently on this cake. And a gentle spread means I need a knife that will, an offset spatula that will help me do this. So there we go. I'm gonna just spread this, and if you see me, yeah, most of the time when you see cake decorating videos, this is made by professionals who have done this time and again, and sometimes there's just a need to show you the videos that people want to see instead of the faults. So I just hope this is of some use to you, right? So there we are. Right, because I'm crumb coating, I am not overly concerned about how this cake sits. I am just, if anything, I am more inclined to make sure that the cake remains stable and steady. Okay, so we filled it all out. I am hopeful that this won't shift and slide, and then I'm going to go in with my offsets with my scraper. Now, Tapita, as I was saying, it goes slow and round. So you literally don't press on it. It's not a pressing matter. No pun intended. Right? There you go. And then I'm going to spread this all the way back. I think another tip, the cake card underneath will guide your shape for you. So there you go. Right? The cake card. So there you have it. So look, because there's a card underneath, the card guides where the yeah, there you have it. And then I'm gonna add the rest to the top. here to seal that in. But I should say, before you fix the problem at all, before anything, ensure that your cake is settled. So because I brought this out of the fridge, it makes covering the cake and fixing the problem way easier. If you ever have these problems, your goal is to make sure that the cake is settled. Okay? That aside, well, Tabitha is saying she wouldn't wish for a warm day, or she wouldn't work on a cake on a warm day. She'd be wishing for the weather to be cold, and just so the cake wouldn't be a flop. The things that, if you live with a cake maker, okay, or if your neighbor is a decorator and you have rain, you see where it comes from all the time, because we're always praying for the best part of the weather. Okay. Now, here's the difference between covering the cake fully and the crumb coat. The cake we covered earlier, that is if you're joining me on replay or you're just joining the chat. The cake we covered earlier was all covered, polished, and it's now set in the fridge. The crumb coat, you can see the cake come through, and that's because this is not fully covered. This is sort of the primer to the covering of the cake. So we've sort of covered the crumbs in. There's enough ganache. I'll come back and cover it. But first of all, in order that we don't have this crumb or this layer seeping into the next layer of covering, we have to make sure that this cake is chilled completely for the ganache to set around it. So to be able to do that, I have to leave that in the fridge. So just going in one more time. Yeah, there we have it. Now let's go put this in the fridge. Okay, so we are back with our covered cake, and if you're just joining us now, you can see the difference between this one and our other cake. In the meantime, first things first, I'm going to take the top bits off so that it's out of the way. But can you see, if you can spot a mistake on here, look, right? When I went to put it in the fridge, my finger went into it, and then we had that. So I have just filled that out, and I'm going to use this to clean it out. There you go. Yeah, I've covered that out. I really don't want to spend any more time on this cake than I really need. So I've covered that out. Now, let's go and take the plastic covering of the cake. Yep. I wish you could see the top of the cake. I wish you could. Can you see how, well, the top of the cake doesn't matter so much. Can you see the sharp edge we have here? This is a quick beginner's way to get a clean, sharp edge on a cake without having to do all the hard work, okay? This is essentially the process I undertook. The plastic is because I can just literally take it off, and then I have my cake drum back. But the plastic then goes in the bin. But the lesson here is that our cake is sharp and it's clean. And a sharp cake like this will definitely come in handy for when you're covering the cake in fondant. Because for those clean, sharp fondant edge, you need a clean cake. Okay? So at least that's what I wanted to show you over here. I don't want to mess with the cake any more than I need to, because it will take too much time. But I have already covered the subject of covering cakes, especially using this double card method in a long form format in different cakes over here on the channel. So you can check that out for additional resources. In the meantime, whilst we're at it, if you're just joining us, welcome. Thank you for being here. Can I ask a favor of you whilst you're here? Do consider liking the video, especially if you found any of our discussion about cake and what I've done today valuable or useful to you. Because by liking the video, you are essentially communicating to YouTube that you have enjoyed your time here and you've learned something. And YouTube is likely to put the video in front of other people who may equally find it useful. So please do me a favor and do that for me.